Hi folks, welcome to the another episode of Fix My Kubernetes Cluster. In this episode, we will follow the same pattern. Let's get started. Yeah, if you see here, I don't have any clusters there. So let me create a brand new cluster with this script. So it is using kind-based cluster like previous episodes. Yeah, if you see here, the cluster has been created. The node pools are ready. Now we created the default namespace is also ready. We created an utils deployment, which we will use to exec into this utils pod and debug something. So we have this Nginx created, and the Nginx is also having an service. The service is also created, and the service is working fine. When we try to reach this Nginx, we are able to get the data. Now it's working. Now the issue has been created. When after that one, if we try to do the curl request to that working service, the service is not reachable. We are getting a problem. So the working service is not reachable. Let's try to fix it. Okay, let's try to execute this command once again to see if the problem still persist. Yeah, the problem is still there. Now, if you see, it is actually not reachable. It is not able to resolve. There is a clue in the error messaging, could not resolve host. So which means the working service host is not able to resolve into the IP so that it will try to reach with the IP. So this IP resolution is not happening. So let's try to see what is this utils pod is configured to resolve this DNS name. So in this pod, so we will have this etc slash resolve.conf file, which will have the configuration by which the DNS resolution will happen in this pod or in this containers, right? If you see here, this resolve.conf is saying, okay, whenever we give a particular domain, this working hyphen service, it will try to search with these domains, search domain. These are search domains. For example, it will try first with working hyphen service dot default dot svc dot cluster dot local. If it doesn't resolve, it will try with working hyphen svc dot cluster dot local. Even if it is not working, then it is this domain. And all these search domains will be using this endpoint to resolve. And it will try to maximum using 5 dots. For example, if I already give working hyphen service dot a dot b, then this will not happen because maximum dots allowed is 5 dots. So it will try with maybe these two, not with these three. So only maximum n dots is 5. So with this, so the configuration looks fine. But let's see what is this name server 10.96.0.10. Let's see what is this 10.96.0.10. So let me do kubectl get pods hyphen a in all the namespaces and hyphen oy to print the IP address. If you see the IP address, none of them is having 10.96.0.10. Maybe let's try with SVC, the service. Okay, if you see here, we have a service with an IP 10.96.0.10 whose name is kubedns. Okay, and it is in namespace kube system. So kube system, the name is kubedns. Let's try to describe the service. If we try to describe the service, yeah, this is the right IP. But if we see the endpoint is none, so which means we have a source IP, but the destination is empty. So which means even though if we try to reach this IP, there is no destination. So it will not reach any pod or any external IP. You can configure the service with pod IPs and external IPs. In this case, there is no IP. Let's try to figure out why there are no components running for this endpoint. If we okay, now let's try to do -o YAML for this SVC, kubedns SVC. If we see here, we have these labels and all. For the service, we say the selector is KH app kubedns. So which means it is not external IP based thing. It is an internal Kubernetes pod based service. So which means any pod that is having this KH hyphen app equal to kubedns label will be selected as an endpoints, the destination endpoints. So in this case, looks there are no pods. That is why it is not there. Maybe we can quickly get that kubectl get pods hyphen a, and I'm saying which are having these labels hyphen l, the label selector. I say kh hyphen app equal to kubedns. Oh, looks there are no resource with that. Then let's see if there are any daemon set with that label. Okay, there is no daemon sets. Let's see if there are any deployments with that label set. Yeah, there is one deployment called core DNS, but number of replicas is 0. Oh, it looks like core DNS is somehow brought down to 0 by some mistake, or that is the issue here. Core DNS is not running in this. Core DNS pods are not running, so which means the endpoints are empty. Let's try to scale this one. Say replica is equal to 2. So instead of get, I say kubectl scale this deployment, which is having this label in this case, which is core DNS, to replica 2. Oh, I have to, instead of a, let me give the proper namespace -n kube system. Yeah, it is scaled. So which means if we try to get the list of pods in this case now, okay, we got the 2 pods started running with this label matching. So which means our service will be able to have, because the service is having this selector, our service should have the endpoints now. Let's describe our service now. Cool. If you see the endpoints, it is having 2 endpoints, which is nothing but those 2 pods that came up, who is having this IP 7 and 8. Which means now if I try to do the curl command for this working service, it is able to resolve because it is having that IP. That 10.96.0.10 is having the endpoints and it is reachable and it is going to the core DNS, and core DNS is able to resolve this working -service domain name. So in Kubernetes, whenever we create a service, each service will have its own DNS. Let's try to look that up. Now I will do in the utils, instead of curl, let's do ns lookup. Let me clear the screen. So we do in the utils ns lookup of working service. It is able to resolve using the server 10.96.0.10, and the fully qualified domain name is working-service dot the namespace dot svc dot cluster domain. So in our case, by default, Kubernetes will have this domain called dot cluster dot local. But you can, when you create a new Kubernetes cluster, you can specify what is my cluster domain. You can say your organization dot cluster dot local, or you can change this basically the domain name. So in this case, it is like that. So which means if I try to resolve with working service dot default, again it is able to resolve, because in the search domain, if you remember, maybe let me do cat of that. So because we had it this dot default, maybe it will try with working -service dot default this domain. If it is having 1, 2, 3, if it is having less than 5 dots, it will try. Then it will try with this one. In this case, it will be like working-service dot default dot svc dot cluster dot local. So it works. Now, for example, so we call a domain name called fully qualified domain if it is having a dot at the end. So if I put a dot, which means I'm saying when you try to resolve, don't add any search domains, because it is already a fully qualified domain name. If we give something like this, right, it will not use any search domain. It will try to resolve. In this case, it will not be, it is not a valid one. So it is failing. So for example, like if I want to do svc dot cluster dot local, it will be resolved. I can give dot, again it will resolve. So this is a, if you put a dot and your any domain, even if you want to do curl request, right, curl https www.google.com, it works. You can even do with dot at the end. Again, it is a fully qualified domain name. Yeah, we spoke about search domain and things like that. Now let's see how this each container is configured with this resolve.conf, right? Now let me do -o YAML of this deployment. Oh, sorry, kubectl get deploy -o YAML. It is in the default namespace. Okay. If you see here, we have DNS policy as cluster first. So we have different policies like, okay, use the clusters DNS policy, but we don't specify anywhere that, okay, use 10.96.0.10. So which means how it is happening. So which means whenever the kubelet is assigning the task to the container D to create these containers, somehow the kubelet is telling use this 10.96.0.10. For that, right, let's see in detail. docker exec-it. I am basically jumping into the control plane node of my time-based Kubernetes cluster. So let me bash. Okay, now now we are inside the control plane node of the cluster, right? Now if I see here cricketl ps, it shows list of containers running. So we have this core DNS, Nginx utils. Now we have these utils running and it is of 0, 0. Now let me do kubectl inspect 005. Okay, it is able to inspect. So while inspecting, let's do a grep of say resolve. Yeah, if you see, when we try to do this right, the cricketl, when it started this utils pod, it is having some source and destination, which is having, okay, in this destination, put the content from this location. Okay, let's see what is here. We have the content in the VM, the control plane VM. If we see here, okay, this is how it is there. So which means the container D is instructed to use this, copy this source into the container's destination /et/resolve host by the kubelet. The kubelet knows it is a container first cluster, container first DNS based cluster. So which means it will use this DNS. Now, if you specify some other DNS, it will use that DNS. For example, right, in this case, I have another example of a pod where we specify instead of DNS policy cluster first or default, you can say none, and we can specify our own DNS policy. If you do this right, in the etc/resolve conf, this configuration will be there, which means it will try to use this name server in order to resolve. So for example, in your organization, right, if you're having an custom DNS server running in your cloud or in your data centers, you can specify this IP here in order to resolve the IP. This is one way to specify only for pod. But let's say you want to specify for the entire cluster. How can you do that, right? Okay, now let's go back and get the the core DNS deployment. So kubectl get deploy -n kube system. Okay, we have this core DNS. So core DNS -o YAML. Yeah, if you see here, for the core DNS, we have it is having a configuration saying core file. Okay, where is this core file coming from? It is coming from a volume called config map. The config map name is core DNS. That is how it is mounted. So which means let us do kubectl get config map. Okay, we have a config map called core DNS. Okay, let's do -o YAML to see the content of this core file by which the core DNS is configured in our case. So we see this is the core file. We are saying it is exposed in port 53. It is having a lot of plugins. And here we say, okay, use this resolve.conf to resolve the addresses. And if it is not resolving, forward it to this location of the node. So like that, we have configuration for the core DNS itself. Yeah, basically you can search for this page, customize the DNS service in the Kubernetes. Here it will, so previously we had something called kube DNS as an DNS resolution service. Then in the later versions of Kubernetes, we moved to core DNS, which is much more efficient compared to the kube DNS. It will be running as a deployment with multiple replicas. Now, if you are having so many applications running which are talking to core DNS frequently, then you may have to scale up the deployment from 2 replicas to 4 replicas based on your use case. Yeah, so we have these configurations. You can look into how to fine tune these configurations. Here we'll be having examples in the core DNS page on how to configure different configuration for the core DNS. Yeah, we spoke about the different configuring different name servers for the pod level. If you want to configure a different, if you want to forward it differently, if you go and search for here how to forward, you can say, okay, if it is coming from this domain, for example, my organization /org, test/org, then forward it all the requests to this one, or else forwarded to 8.8.8, which is the Google's DNS server. So basically, you can write more forward rules in your the core file, which will be mounted to the core DNS based on your use case. You can do that. Hope you learned about how the DNS resolution is happening, and if it is not happening, how to use NS lookup tool and the etc resolve configuration, the core file to understand what is happening wrong with the DNS resolution. If you learned something, please like this video, subscribe for more content like this. Thank you.